Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this critical hearing to ratify the water rights settlement for the Pueblo of Zuni and the other federally recognized tribes before us here today. I also want to extend a warm welcome to Governor Arden Kucate, who is testifying before us here today on how this landmark legislation would benefit the Zuni people. It's my honor to represent Zuni Pueblo, who have called the northwest corner of New Mexico home for time immemorial. By legislation, the Zuni Indian Tribe Water Rights Settlement Act provides congressional approval for the settlement agreement between the Zuni tribe, the state of New Mexico, the New Mexico State Engineer, and the United States in its capacity as trustee for the Zuni tribe. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record these letters of support from the state of New Mexico and the Zuni tribe.
Without objection.
This settlement was necessary because for far too long, the United States has failed Zuni in the protection of its rights. For hundreds of years, upstream development depleted the Zuni River, putting Zuni's agriculture at risk and straining an already arid region. To help right this wrong, the legislation provides nearly $685 million to implement common sense projects, including irrigation infrastructure improvements, water and wastewater treatment projects, watershed protection, groundwater storage, and economic development projects. In addition, the bill recognizes the tribe's senior water rights in a manner that honors tribal sovereignty by providing Zuni the ability to manage their water rights for agriculture, commercial, residential, and other uses. It's also important to note that the settlement includes protections for non-Indian water users in the basin so that all New Mexicans will benefit from this critical agreement. Finally, the bill implements permanent protections for the sacred Zuni Salt Lake. For those of you who have never been to the Zuni Salt Lake, it is truly a special location of sacred importance to the Zuni people and other New Mexico tribes. The home of the Salt Mother, the minerals at the Salt Lake are used by Zuni, Laguna, Acoma, and other regional tribes for ceremonial events and other purposes, and it is essential that this area be protected from development or other environmental threats. This legislation would protect over 90,000 acres of federal land in and around the Zuni Salt Lake and also move 4,756 acres into trust for Zuni to ensure that all sacred areas are included within the protected boundaries. The United States government has a trust responsibility to the Zuni people, and this legislation takes a critical step towards fulfilling that promise by providing for the codification of Zuni's water rights and protection of their sacred lands. I also want to acknowledge my support for the Rio San Jose and Rio Jemez Water Rights Settlements Act, which provides for over $800 million for the pueblos of Acoma and Laguna to develop water infrastructure and repair the Acomita Dam. I want to express my appreciation to Governor Randall Vicente, who is with us as well here today and testifying on this legislation. This is another critical bill for my constituents, and I appreciate the opportunity to work alongside Representative Ledger Fernandez to introduce this and support our shared tribal partners. The legislation before the committee today would fully honor the United States obligation to the tribes in my district and throughout New Mexico. We must pass these bills. Thank you. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Governor Kucate for 5 minutes.
Good morning. On behalf of the Zuni tribe, I want to extend my sincere thanks to the subcommittee for holding this hearing and giving me the opportunity to testify. Zuni's reservation is the largest of New Mexico's 19 pueblos, containing almost 500,000 acres within the Zuni River Basin in New Mexico, carved out from our ancestral homelands. It is located in a very rural area of western New Mexico and is home to close to 10,000 members. Long before the coming of the Spanish conquistadors, we grew corn, squash, beans, and other food crops in our main village along the Zuni River and in surrounding satellite communities along tributary streams and springs, often using an irrigation technique that we are famous for, waffle gardens. Historical photographs showing the river and these gardens have been submitted as supporting documents to my testimony today. Our adaptive irrigation techniques and careful stewardship of our water and lands allowed us to irrigate thousands of acres of land. Not surprisingly, many of our prayers and rituals recognize the importance of water and agriculture to our culture and survival. Our water supply was relatively stable until the late 19th century when the settlers upstream of our reservation began diverting and storing virtually the entire flow of the Zuni River's primary tributary. Clear cutting of the forest in the Zuni Mountains compounded our water supply woes, causing severe erosion and clogging our waterways with silt. Consequently, the Zuni River, once a perennial stream running through the heart of our village, is now a mere trickle for the most of the year. Unfortunately, instead of taking action to stop these upstream diversions by the newcomers to the valley, the federal government encouraged settlement by non-Indians through a poorly conceived attempt to centralize Zuni farming away from lands near our eastern and northern borders. Disregarding our traditional farming practices, the government constructed a series of dams and reservoirs within our reservation. The construction of the first and largest dam at what is called Black Rock buried Zuni sacred spring, Matlokitsi, the original home of our salt mother. The dam failed in its first year, leaving a path of devastation downstream. Although rebuilt soon after the failure, it began silting immediately, and within 20 years, the reservoir had filled with sediment, losing nearly all of its storage capacity. Today, Black Rock Dam only serves to provide limited protection. The other dams and reservoirs that allowed in the wake of Black Rock's failure were also poorly engineered and not maintained, and they effectively ended our traditional farming practices that had been successful for generations. Today, our 5 irrigation units are largely useless and need to be re-engineered and rebuilt. Our pending water settlement over 25 years in the making will allow us to rehabilitate these 5 irrigation units in a manner suited to climatic conditions as well as to Zuni's traditional irrigation practices. It will provide us with funds to replace our aged municipal water system, including constructing a water treatment facility capable of addressing the high levels of contaminants occurring in our groundwater, and constructing a modern wastewater treatment facility. For Zuni to sustain and grow, we must have modern and safe, reliable drinking water and wastewater services. The settlement will also provide funds to restore the Zuni River and real nutria channels to support water flows, including for ecological and traditional purposes. We plan to rehabilitate and improve livestock watering facilities, community water hauling stations used by our farmers and ranchers. In addition to resolving the tribe's water rights in the Zuni River Basin, H.R. 8951 will ensure the continuation of protections for the sacred Zuni Salt Lake and surrounding sanctuary and provide for the transfer to the tribe in trust of approximately 9 sections of BLM land surrounding the lake. The Zuni Salt Lake is located approximately 60 miles south of our reservation in a remote area that is primarily used for grazing and hunting. The lake and sanctuary are sacred to our tribe and other tribes and pueblos in New Mexico and Arizona. Ratification of our settlement by Congress is of enormous importance to my community and its future. It will usher in what I sincerely believe will be a new chapter for our tribe, allowing us to protect and sustainably develop our community's limited water resources, to restore traditional agriculture, and to facilitate much-needed economic development. It will also allow us to adapt growing impacts of climate change. The tribe is not aware of any opposition to the settlement, and it is supported by the only irrigation company in the basin and by the state of New Mexico. Thank you. Elakwa.
Congressman Vasquez for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Kucate, thank you again so much for being here with us today. Governor, in addition to the support of the state of New Mexico's Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, the state engineer Mike Hammond, the settlement agreement is supported by the Raymond Land and Irrigation Company, the only irrigation company and the largest non-Indian irrigator in the basin. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Significantly, the company's water rights, as well as those of all other non-Indian water users in the basin, have already been quantified, and the settlement essentially protects those rights from a priority call by the tribe. In short, all of these water users in the basin would benefit from this settlement, and I am not aware of any opposition to it. Are you aware of any opposition to this, Governor?
Yes.
You are aware of opposition or no opposition?
Can you repeat the question again?
Are you aware of any opposition to this water settlement?
No, we've been making every effort proactively to talk to some of the folks in the K-Chung County area, and so at this point, there really isn't anyone in any opposition.
Thank you so much, Governor. And could you share with this committee how this legislation would benefit the people of Zuni?
Yes.
Could you comment on specifically how this legislation would benefit the people of Zuni?
Thank you. You know, as a child, growing up in Zuni Pueblo in Rio Nutria, we had a living river. And, you know, times have changed, and for this settlement is really significant for our people to be able to at least have the opportunity to sustainably develop limited water resources and also restore our traditional agriculture, and which is the cornerstone of our cultural beliefs and practices, and facilitate economic development, you know, opportunities. And then also to ensure that the preservation of our Zuni Salt Lake continues, which is very significantly a cultural, you know, a value of principle for our way of life.
Governor, could you comment just a little bit more on the importance of the Zuni Salt Lake to your culture and to your people?
I have a little hearing problems. Can you?
If you could just expand on the importance of the Zuni Salt Lake to your, culturally to your people?
Zuni Salt Lake is something that's been a part of our way of life since the emergence of our people. And all these centuries of years, the Zuni people and other tribes have made pilgrimages to the home of the Salt Mother. And it's very significant to all of us for spiritual guidance, and we also collect the salt for ceremonial and household purpose and use.
Thank you, Governor. How did upstream development on the Zuni River affect the Zuni tribe? How did upstream development on the Zuni River have an impact on your tribe?
Well, as I indicated, you know, we've been able to live off our Zuni River for thousands of years, and since the way that things had occurred, you know, without our control, the river is very significant for our way of life in terms of our culture, our religion, and our traditional doings, that the people, you know, make offerings to the river, and that's why I really like for our people to have our river returned to us.
Thank you, Governor. This legislation is incredibly important to Zuni and to my constituents. I appreciate the committee's consideration of this legislation, and I urge all of my colleagues to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.